Hi everyone, welcome back to the Eat, Burn, Sleep podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Eastern remedies, philosophies and well-being. I have a really special guest here with me, Constantin, who used to work in business and now is still in business, but in the business of wellness. Constantin Bjerke is a multicultural entrepreneur, a board advisor and a creative brand consultant who has a remarkable well-being journey. After establishing himself as a media producer, winning 5 Cannes Lions, Constantin lived through his own personal challenges, which led him to seek healing and rediscovery. He had a transformative encounter with Ayurveda and Panchakarma in India, and that ignited his curiosity and sparked an exploration of ancient Eastern wisdom and healing practices. From here, he co-founded Dhatu Wellness, a platform dedicated to bringing the benefits of Eastern healing and wisdom to the Western world. Through Dhatu, he aims to make holistic well-being accessible to many, drawing upon his own transformative journey and network of preeminent therapists and doctors. Constantin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been such a pleasure meeting you and hearing about your story. So we went through it before and I thought I want to share with people because we have, in a way, a similar journey where we had a shift in our lives that was brought on by some negative events. And oftentimes when we go through adversity and through negativity, we don't realize that it's a way of transforming our lives and that of others for the better. So could you tell me a little bit about your life before co-founding Dhatu Wellness and how you came to wanting to do this?
Of course. So I think I've had a, wonderful life pre-Dhatu. I started out very early, directly after school, in media, TV, film production, and had a brief stint in finance, which was completely not my thing. And actually, curiously, the first time that my body told me that I should not do something, so I was working on the trading floor for about a year, and then I had sudden hearing loss at, I think, the age of 27 or something, and it was just, my sister said to me, "What don't you want to hear?" And I guess I didn't want to be in that environment, and so I quit and went straight back to media, started my first company in, I think, 2009 or something, which was bringing art, design, fashion, food, culture from the print magazine world back in those days to video on the internet. So yeah, I spent, the first 20 years of my career broadly as a storyteller in television, films, documentaries, commercials. And then a few, at the time, unconnected events started to happen. First, my father died very suddenly, which kind of unraveled my family in a very unforeseen and unpleasant way. And then I decided I should probably build my own family and have my own little nest, and got married, which also unraveled when COVID started after a year of being together, being married. And then my dog died, and then I tore my meniscus actually for no particular reason, but then I had to have surgery also during COVID. Then I fell in love again, but was clearly not ready for a new relationship, which I thought would be the solution to everything, which I think was very much how humans go about a lot of things. When we suffer something, we think, the next thing is going to solve it. And we need to add something to make something better. And this was a very wise and wonderful woman who I have great respect for, who realized that I was just broken goods and was definitely not a safe and stable and emotionally available person to date. And so when, she put that hot potato that I was back on the table and said, "I don't think I want to deal with that," I thought, now everything has just collapsed, and because also production work during the pandemic had stopped, so I wasn't really working. My dog was dead, my wife was gone, and I just spent some weeks in hospital, rehab physiotherapy to get my leg to work again. And I didn't know what to do with myself, and so I bought a one-way ticket to India and thought maybe Panchakarma, which is this foundational Ayurvedic cleanse, which is a 3-week hospitalized mind, body, soul reset and detoxification, could help. And it did. So that's kind of the before and the then what happened in a brief summary.
And what happened during those 3 weeks?
I think what happened during those 3 weeks is I encountered extremely wise, extremely humble healers at this Ayurvedic hospital called Vaidyagrama in southern India in Coimbatore, who had a way of healing and detoxifying me that was just very quickly visible, noticeable, feelable. I don't think that's a word. And through their wisdom and their advice, gave me a different way and perspective of looking at my life, of thinking about what is important and what I want to be doing, what I should be doing. And because this was so effective, and I'm a very rational human being generally, I thought, wow, this is really working, and this is really simple and really effective. I'm curious what else there is. And so I just stayed in India after that initial cleanse and spent about 1.5 years out of the last 3 years in India just on a little curiosity tour, finding other healers, other practitioners of different modalities and schools of thoughts and traditions, and just found I don't know, in the West maybe we would call it a toolkit of how to live a healthier, happier, more grounded, steady, stable life that makes me very happy.
That's wonderful. What you're describing is typically what happens to all of us, which is when we are stressed, misaligned, we're not doing the right thing for us, and that each person is different, obviously. The body expresses lack of ease, dis-ease, and we start somatizing. So you're on the trading floor, you didn't want to hear it. Your ears shut down. Oftentimes people who have issues with the throat, it's communication. Autoimmunity, which is what I suffer from, is typical of keeping feelings in and just continuing without listening to your body, where you keep going, you give to others, and you don't give enough to yourself, and your body goes, hold on, it's coming out. And it can come out in so many ways, depending on our genetics. The expression of genes will be different. So in my family, there is autoimmunity, but in someone else's family, there might be depression. Others, it might be diabetes or hormonal issues or whatever it is. And oftentimes we push ourselves, and I'm talking about myself too, I'm guilty of it despite being in the wellness business. I remember back in 2019 when I launched the Eat, Burn, Sleep platform. I launched it on the 1st of October, and I hadn't taken a single day off to build it. Waking up much earlier than my kids most days just to cram in 2-3 hours of work. And on the day it launched, I got hit by a bike. And I was in bed with a broken ankle. I needed surgery. I did a lockdown just before lockdown. So when lockdown happened, I was like, I've done it already. I've done my time already. But someone said to me, if you don't give your body a break, it will give it to you. And that's what happens. When we push too much, and that can happen to any of us. It can happen to me today. If I'm too much into Eat, Burn, Sleep, if I'm too much into all the things that I'm trying to do, my body will express itself one way or another. And the way we live our lives these days, we're so disconnected. For example, I live in London, but my genetics are from Morocco and Iran. This is not my natural habitat. And you can't talk about this because it's discrimination, but it's not. I need more sunshine than there is in London to get my normal vitamin D levels. It's just in my genes. You have Northern European genes, so you will process dairy better than I do because it's your genes.
And I still prefer being in the sun.
And you still... But we have this, and we are all challenged. So how do you keep the balance on a daily basis?
It's such a great question, and actually really pertinent point, because I'm also, now we're 1 year in, and I'm also at a point that you've just described where I have realized that starting something new that is, supposed to further well-being has actually come at the cost of my own well-being and balance. So I have totally overextended myself over the last year, which, is necessary. And there are times of building and times of intensity, and then there's times of rest. But I'm very acutely aware that at the end of this year, I need a little break because I've put my absolute everything into this. And I'm very lucky because I'm surrounded by people who, whose life's work and mission is to help others heal. So I'm, not surrounded by people which, one might have been in business before, who try to push you to just, go another extra mile because they don't really care if you break. But I'm surrounded by people who really do care that I'm well and that we're all well. And, when the team says, maybe you should go to bed, then I take that very seriously. But it's So I think the principle is that everything needs to be in balance. And everyone's balance, as you said, is different. It depends on their predisposition. It depends on their genetics. It depends on their mental state. It depends on their nutrition. It depends on so many different things that, I'm very resilient, but I just need a little bit I need to put more structure into my day, and just remember to do the things for me and not just doing the things for others. I think of it as, I think I called it once, like constructive selfishness. You have to make sure that your own batteries are sufficiently charged. They don't always have to be full, but they have to be sufficiently charged, because if they're not, then you can't serve others.
I couldn't agree more. For me, there's something, if I do not do it, everything becomes a bit more difficult. And that thing is doing my morning little prayer / meditation, whatever you call it. If I don't do that, so there's a bunch of things. That daily movement, if I don't do it, my mind goes crazy. And I do it morning and evening. And I can see that the days where I do it, it's like someone's putting oil and everything glides and it's easy. But it's not much, but it's just remembering to do it. So I'm in need of a break, and I'm thinking of coming to your next Datu retreat in Tuscany. Could you explain to me how it works? It's time for a little break. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. A reminder to all our listeners to subscribe, rate and share this podcast with your friends and anyone who might enjoy listening to it. We also have a discount code for all our podcast listeners, which I will be sharing at the end. Keep listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. So I'm in need of a break, and I'm thinking of coming to your next Datu retreat in Tuscany. Could you explain to me how it works?
That's a big question. What specifically?
So you bring all these healers together. So what do you have? Do you have people to do acupuncture?
Okay.
So I just want to know the kind of practitioners who are there. How do we unwind? How do we get reconnected to ourselves? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about reconnecting to ourselves.
So how do I best describe that? So I guess in a way, the Datu team, the Datu approach is sort of loosely based on what I have found that has helped me. So it is, first of all, it's, the word holistic gets thrown around like rice at a wedding at the moment, but so perhaps we say multidisciplinary. It's not dogmatically one thing and definitely not another thing, because I think that mind, body, soul, holistic well-being for each individual requires lots of different things, because again, everyone is different, right? Some people liken it a little bit to like when you're building, something with Lego, right? You have different color bricks, and some people might have more blue bricks, which are, for your mental ease, and maybe some people have more green bricks, which are for your physical strength. And so they can be very different things, but everybody needs a little bit of all of them. What we have is we have a combination of different healing practices, which includes, we have a clinical psychiatrist at Datu who turned her practice into Ayurveda and then into human design, which is a really fascinating new well, I say new to me, methodology. We have Tibetan healers who bring what's called Sowa Rigpa, which is the Tibetan system of medicine, Ayurveda obviously being the ancient Indian naturopathic medicine system that's 5,000 years old. We have practitioners of TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, which includes acupuncture and cupping and things like that. But we also do things like art therapy, and we actually have a really popular improv comedy class because it's important for people, to let go and to laugh and to have a good time, because laughing is really healthy. So it's really just proposing and offering and having available this really broad range of skill sets and modalities, which then get tailored to each individual guest. And there is an Ayurvedic Vaidya, which is essentially an Ayurvedic doctor, a naturopathic doctor, who, does and you always have to be careful because in the West, you can't call that a diagnosis and you can't call that a doctor, because in the West we're so obsessed with our scientific system of medicine and pharmacological approaches to everything that the naturopathic world is a little discriminated against, perhaps. But so they analyze every guest and they make recommendations on what might be useful and helpful and good for each individual guest. And so that then tailors a program of treatments during the week and what classes, whether that's art therapy or whether that's breathing or whether that's meditation or whether that is expressive movement or chanting or going for a mindful walk. All those kinds of things are tailored for each person. And it's all underpinned by a very specific diet, which is based on Ayurvedic principles. Food is, as you know better than anyone, is the first line of defense, is the first form of medicine for anyone. So having that very healthy diet for a week is actually extremely detoxifying and strengthening for guests. So I hope that broadly answers the question, because I know that's a lot.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's really interesting how around the world there are different ways to treat people. For example, this morning I was talking to a friend of mine who's from England, and I was telling her about homeopathic remedies. She didn't know what it was, when in France, in Germany, it's very common to go and see a homeopath and get support for your immunity, for so many different things. Actually, in 2019, when I broke my ankle, I was prescribed homeopathy to help support the healing. And at the same time, I followed the Eat, Burn, Sleep lifestyle, and I, in fact, created a protocol for myself, which I then added onto the platform, an injury recovery protocol. But I'm a big believer that one should use every crutch around, going from therapy to traditional Chinese medicine, homeopathy, whatever we can, in preventing issues. And of course, allopathic medicine, when, sometimes you have a bacterial infection and you need a course of antibiotics. Does it damage your gut? Yes, it does. But does it save your life? It does as well. So it's a question of damage limitation and trying to optimize. And to be able to optimize, we have to educate ourselves. The issue is people these days want to outsource health, to either completely leave it to a doctor to tell them, or to leave it to Yalda, but actually it's a mix of everything. And educating ourselves on what's available and then connecting to our own bodies to see what feels right. Because no one knows better than us when we are connected what is right for us and what is wrong for us. For example, these days, heavy weightlifting, weight training is, highly fashionable. It is the worst thing for my body. I thrive with body weight exercise, and I get the muscle definition if I wanted by doing that. But if I go and lift heavy weights, I get water retention because of the cortisol spike, and I actually get much less definition. So each person is different. You and I have made it our work, this discovery, and trying to help people. But to all our listeners, I always say this: you can never fully outsource health, and you've got to educate yourself.
100%. You in fact, you cannot only not fully outsource it, you can not outsource it at all. We have a little saying that is, when you realize that your own well-being begins with yourself, that's the moment you start to actually heal and take responsibility and control over your own life and well-being. The problem is the attempt to outsource it, and I think in part it has a little bit to do with the gods in white lab coats, and we sort of have when a doctor says you have X, Y, Z, then they come from a place of great authority. But almost more importantly than that, we have begun to numb our own systems because we drink, we eat badly, we sleep badly. The body becomes less sensitive to external influences. When we're numb to those influences, we don't know anymore what is good for us and what is not, right? I always give that example. The first cigarette anyone smokes, their body completely rebels against it. And then we force ourselves, for cultural reasons or coolness reasons or whatever reasons, into suppressing that very natural reaction. And no one has ever had a first sip of vodka and said, "Oh, that's amazing," right? The body tells you this is not for me. But we're able to numb ourselves because it's cultural or because it's, en vogue or whatever it is. And so we stop listening to ourselves. And I think the most eye-opening, but actually everything-opening experience that I've had after my panchakarma in India was that I suddenly felt, my body felt again, right? When I left after these 3 weeks in a, very sheltered, hospitalized setting, and the first time, the sun in all its brightness shone into my eyes again, I immediately got a little headache because it was, whoa, like that extreme exposure to such brightness is not healthy. And then, of course, at some point a few days later, I'm like, oh, I'm in India. I should, have a lovely butter chicken. And you realize that, the butter, the dairy, actually my tummy is, I'm not sure you should have, that size portion. Maybe try a little less for the enjoyment. That's probably enough. And so suddenly I felt everything again. And that is how we're born. And then with all the shitty stuff that we eat and that we expose ourselves to, we lose it and we numb ourselves. And if people get back to that wonder of what your body can tell you and what you have all this wisdom of, millennia of human existence inside yourself. And when you rediscover how to listen to it, it's one of the greatest things ever.
Thank you so much for mentioning this, because one of the things that I often get as a way of feedback from the Eat, Burn, Sleep method, the first thing is people tell me they start feeling amazing. And it's not just food, there's food, movement, and mental wellness, because you can't fix anything just with food. They say to me that when they start having treats, what I mean by treats is things that we have on the red list. So my method is very moderate, and I don't like the idea of you can't do something anymore. So people are allowed to have whatever they want a few times a week, and there is what I call a treat system. But if they overdo the treats, they say, oh, I've become intolerant, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, how much did you have? And yeah, but I used to be fine. I said, yes, but I'm like,
all you.
Yeah, it's like alcohol, or like you just mentioned cigarette. If you stop drinking for a while, your tolerance to alcohol goes right down. Mm-hmm. And it's a toxin. I love a glass of wine, but it is a toxin. Okay, there are some, cardiovascular benefits, but you get them if you eat blueberries. You don't need to drink wine. I drink wine because I love it, but I know it's toxic. Now, the social interactions that you get when you're with your group of friends, that can definitely offset it. And I always say that you can get away with much more poor choices if you're in good company, because that reduces your cortisol levels, and it's been proven. But nonetheless, some people think that suddenly they've become intolerant to eating a full pizza and drinking and having tiramisu for pudding. And I'm like, no, it's like when you reduce alcohol, you suddenly can't drink as much because your body recognizes the toxicity. And before that, you were numb, but you had other symptoms. Maybe you were overweight, and you had acne, and you had hormonal issues, and a low mood, and a foggy brain, and poor sleep. Now you're simply more aware. And it's not boring. It's just a question of moderation and getting that hit from also other things. I get a high from exercise. It makes me feel so good. So we can get all the pleasures from life without damaging our systems.
Yeah, that's I couldn't agree more. Because there's always a price that you pay, right? So that I think that sentence you just said about people saying, "Oh, it's boring." The benefits of the, half a bottle of vodka and the big steak and that, seemingly fun night out, you pay the price the next morning and you pay it over the next couple of days. Whereas feeling good is just something that you can steadily and continually have and enjoy. And this, to be honest, this is really all that we try to do, is we try to empower people to actually make their own decisions. But everyone, and it's another big concept of yogic philosophy, is, anyone should live the life they wish to live. Who am I to tell anyone how they should live their life? It's just about empowering people to be able to make those choices. And when you're so numb to everything, you're not actually making a choice. You're going with the flow, you're going with the culture, you're going with the habit, you're going with what your environment is doing, but you're not consciously choosing to do those things. And if we can help people reset, cleanse, detoxify, and then see, what it actually feels like to have a bottle of wine and have a hangover the next day, rather than being used to it, then people start making different decisions.
Yeah, making the choice and the awareness makes all the difference, because, again, when I get feedback sometimes about the Eat, Burn, Sleep lifestyle, where people say to me, "Oh my God, it was so easy. It was much easier than what I expected." The reason why they feel that way is because it became a choice. Mm-hmm. They decided to be aware of their choices. They decided to be aware of the food they're putting in their body, and they're suddenly realizing that actually a beautiful plate of vegetable with good quality fish and good quality olive oil tastes amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's not difficult. So you go from a mindset of feeling deprived to a mindset of feeling nourished. So you go into nourishment, and from then on, it's a positive game and a very enjoyable one, whether it is health education or taking the time to take a break or making the time to go for yoga or doing acupuncture or whatever it is. Because you have decided, you're actually enjoying it and you don't feel deprived.
Yeah, and I think that's perhaps the most important point, is it is not a sacrifice, but we have set up culture. And I'm not a good enough historian to judge whether this is how much of these roots lie in religion, but Lent is a sacrifice, right? And so people now have dry January. Just the language around it is, I'm giving up alcohol, right? It's all around sacrifice, and the language and the tone and everything is around that. And then the 1st of February, let's go and crack open a bottle of tequila. But it's actually not sacrifice. It's exactly what you're saying. It's when I'm moving from this mindset of sacrifice and giving up to a mindset of nourishing, because I can suddenly feel it again, it's empowering and it's rewarding, and it's actually so much easier. I mean, we get this all the time. People come for a week and people say, "Oh, but what can really happen in a week?" So much can happen in a week. People can start to sleep again properly. People can start to digest again properly. And just having, a week where you eat proper food, the body is, it's like pouring water in the desert. It immediately, gets absorbed, and you see the first seed sprouting again. So it's really beautiful to see on, day 4 or 5, when people who have not been kind to themselves, who now have done it for a few days, suddenly they feel their bodies going back into a sensation of being nourished, of being healthy, of being stronger, of sleeping better, and you just feel better. And that's a really nice thing.
Yeah, a week does a lot because the body is wired for healing. and we are made to survive. Every cell in us, every bit of us wants to heal and survive. So from the moment we give support, and that's why you see these people who have these incredible transformations. But the reason why it happens is because the body is made and is wired for healing. So if we give the support, which sometimes can be small changes, we immediately see results. And then the beautiful thing happens where we get rewards from the results and we become hooked to feeling good and we continue making better choices. And hopefully this is what we inspire all of you to do after this podcast.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. I think it's, you know, when you say hooked, I think our hope is because that's a sort of another addiction, right? And there can be too much of a good thing, and you see it with people who, you know, are running 10 miles every day and who are going to gym, to heavy weight lift every day, and you can completely overdo that as well, and it just becomes another addiction to the adrenaline or whatever it is that, you know, the endorphins, just like people have sex addictions, right? You're just having another dependency that you're creating. It just looks or sounds like it's healthy because, well, it's running, right? But that's just as bad.
Oh my God, this reminds me, I saw in the news the other day, like a public figure in the UK who was addicted to alcohol apparently and did 30 marathons in 30 days. And I thought to myself, first, is that humanly possible? And secondly, it sounds like a new addiction.
Yeah.
So the health lies into the very boring concept of moderation. But that's what keeps us well. And this is why I'm a big believer that nothing should be off limits. For example, in my method, I ask people to not be 100% compliant to the green lists, we have like the green food list, which is the things you can have every day. And some people take it to the extreme and never have any treat. They're like, oh, it's easier, so I don't have to think about it. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? If you cut a food group 100%, you lose the bacteria, the gut bacteria to digest it. And that's counterproductive. As difficult as it might sound to some people who like to do things extremely, it's not very good for you. What is good for you is to have a lot of good and a little bit of so-called bad, because it's not that bad if you have a little bit of it. What's bad is if you have too much of it.
Yeah. On the marathons, it's just peculiar random pub quiz knowledge. I was with somebody recently whose child was running 90 marathons in 90 days, and then I thought, surely that must be a world record or something. And it turns out that the world record for marathons on consecutive days is above 500. So some poor soul has run 500 marathons in 500 days. Good for him.
We're going into very inflammatory land here.
Yeah, no, but you're right. It is another addiction. And when we get severe runners, I always ask them, what are you running away from? And there usually is something that they're running away from. On the snacks thing, our senior doctor and wonderful teacher always talk. We talk about snacks, and snacks are inherently unhealthy, right? Like the idea that there's a healthy snack is a stupid oxymoron. There is no such thing. You're meant to have meals, and that's it. And our culture has created snacking that's inherently unhealthy, but that's fine. And the problem actually is when you're indulging in something, which you should, right? Like, as you said, have, I don't know what's on your red list, but have it, once a week or whatever it is. But then please enjoy it while you're having it. The worst thing you can do is to eat something that is not necessarily good for you, and then psychologically on top of it make yourself feel bad about it, because then you're not getting any benefit out of it. In fact, you're making it worse. So if you're going to indulge in moderation, and indulge with joy and awareness and happiness, because then whatever that, for me it's a Bounty bar, that actually becomes nourishing because it gives another part of your body joy.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Those are great words. I was going to ask you, which advice would you like to end the podcast with? But you've just said it. It is so true. Otherwise, you raise your cortisol levels. So if you enjoy it, at least it's a plus. So,
yeah.
Well done. I completely agree with that. It's been such a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you so much. I'm going to be linking your website and everything, and I hope people go and enjoy the Datu Wellness Retreats. I'm looking forward to my stay now, even more so than I did before. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much to all of you for listening to this podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. It's always such a pleasure to talk about health because it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Looking after our health is a daily thing, just like brushing our teeth. We've got to focus on it, we've got to do it right so we can live better and happier lives. For those of you who are not members of the platform yet, we have a discount code for all our podcast listeners. You can get 15% off the memberships. Just enter the code podcast15 at checkout. Thank you, and make sure to read all the articles and all the free content we have on eatburnsleep.com to keep you motivated and informed and educated about living an anti-inflammatory lifestyle.